life insurers put life into the things you live for. The new factory that's hiring your neighbors. Maintenance on the bridge that keeps traffic flowing. The paycheck that puts pizza night on the table. Life insurers contribute $8 trillion to communities and local economies through bond purchases and other investments, and protect the financial security of 90 million American families, like yours. See how life insurers put life into America at acli.com. Paid for by the American Council of Life Insurers.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
I've had a thrill of a day today because I got to fill in for the great Larry Kudlow for the last hour on the Larry Kudlow Show. So you got 3 hours of me today, 3 hours. So I'm having a lot of fun. We'll have fun in this next hour and next 2 hours, frankly. Got a great group of people coming on the show. I always say that I'm not the best radio talk show host, but I get some of the best guests to come on who are so insightful and educate us about the economy, about finances, about politics. So we'll have a lot of fun today. For those of you who don't get our Unleashed Prosperity hotline, please sign up for it. I'm not selling you anything. This is free. It costs you nothing. I just want you to be really well educated on the issues of the day when it comes to the economy. This is something that John Fund and I and others put together every night. We stay up pretty late, get the thing out first thing in the morning so you can get 5 or 6 talking points on the economy. It's very brief. I always put in a couple of humor items because we like to make it fun to read, but also, we always include some charts, and because a picture really is worth 1,000 words, because it's the kind of news that you're not going to get from the mainstream media because they lie. They are fake news, and the Unleashed Prosperity Hotline is not fake news. It is real news that you can use. And so I hope you'll sign up, and to get it, just go to unleashedprosperity.com and click on hotline and send us your email address and we'll send it to you. And we're not selling you anything. There's no ads or anything on that. It's just pure education. And I want you to continue to be right on top of all the major issues of the day. So, I want to start with 2 points, if I can, one of which I said on Kudlow's show, but I want to say it again because it's so important. I want to expand on this, that I am enraged by what has happened with someone who I think is a great American hero, and that is Elon Musk. And I think that he came to this town of Washington, D.C. He tried to clean it up. He tried to expose the thievery, the waste, the fraud that is rampant in Washington. He looked under the rock and saw all these gross critters that have been living under the rock of Washington, D.C. that are getting rich off of this stuff. There's an old saying that I use all the time on this show, that people come to Washington to do good and they end up doing well. And that is so true. These do-gooders, we're going to really make America great again, and we're going to help all the poor people, and we're going to make our schools great, and they do none of it. And Americans don't get richer; they get richer. This is a syndicate. This is a scandal, and this is a scam. Washington, and look, some people, I'm not talking about everybody, but there are a lot of people, the lawyers, the lobbyists, the special interest groups, the non-governmental organizations, they're getting rich off of this, and they're getting rich, folks, off of your money. Your tax dollars and my tax dollars. You want to know why we're borrowing $2 trillion a year? Because there's at least $1 trillion of that is just waste and fraud and improper payments. I mean, the federal government's own auditors say $500 billion a year of, quote, improper payments. Come on here. Come on. Let's do something about it. So a hero stepped forward, and his name is Elon Musk. And my friend Vivek Ramaswamy was in on this too. And they started looking under the hood and finding all the incredible waste. The fact that money's being stolen from Medicare, stolen the unemployment insurance program. Remember the PPP program? Hundreds of billions of dollars were stolen from that program. Half of these people don't even live in the United States, for God's sake. And they're getting our tax dollars. And Elon Musk is saying, hey, the emperor wears no clothes. And for that, he was ripped apart by the liberal media. He was laughed at. I mean, all he did was shine light on the truth. Why is he a villain? You know, I've used this analogy before on the show, but I'll use it again. It's like saying, you know, the real villain was Elliot Ness. You know, it was Elliot Ness for finding all these fraudsters. Al Capone, you know, he's the one who put Al Capone in jail. So Elliot Ness is the bad guy, not Al Capone. Does this make any sense? You can tell I'm angry about this. I can barely talk about it. I get so angry. And then, you know, they run him out of town. And that we cannot let that happen, folks. We need to go after the waste in our government. We have to make it an efficient government. And I'm going to tell you, and I've been in this town for a long time, almost 40 years. And I got to tell you that people are getting rich off of this stuff. It's a syndicate, and they keep talking about how they're going to do good, and they don't do good. They get rich off of it at your expense and my expense. That's the reason 3 of the 5 wealthiest counties in the United States are in Washington, D.C., or around Washington, D.C., because everybody's getting rich off this racket. So thank you, Elon Musk. You're a hero. Why are people spray painting the Teslas? Why are people, you know, denouncing him and laughing at him, going after his companies? He's one of America's great pioneers. He's one of America's greatest entrepreneurs of all time. He's created hundreds of thousands of jobs. He's created hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth, not just for himself, but for Americans who invested in his great companies. And he came to Washington. He didn't make one damn penny off of this. He did it as a act of patriotism, and they run him out of town. And so I think we should be having parades for this guy, and we now got to implement the changes that he's been talking about, because I think it is so important for our country. We can't keep borrowing $2 trillion a year. We cannot do it. I'm telling you, this is the road to hell. If we keep acting like, oh, there's nothing wrong, whistling Dixie, as we borrow more money, and it's all going to shysters, basically. It's the scam is on, and the left continues to defend it. These are the people who say we need good government. Yeah, I'm all in favor of good government. I'm not saying I'm more of a libertarian. I think our government's too big, but I do believe we need government. But why can't we have good government? Why can't we have politicians who implement these changes that Elon Musk was talking about? Why is it virtually every Democrat ridiculed what Elon Musk was doing? If you believe in good government, and I know we have a lot of Democrats who listen to the show, and I appreciate it. If you're a Democrat and you vote for these government programs, don't you want them to work? Or do you want them to go to fraudsters? Because that's what's going on with our government right now. And so, Elon Musk, I'm saluting you for the great patriotic service you provided for our country. I hope that DOGE does not go away. I think we need a permanent Department of Government Efficiency in Washington. And that is my position, and I'm not going to change it because I've seen it firsthand. I've seen people getting rich. I saw, during COVID, and for 3 years after COVID, I would see people, who were federal employees. What did you do this afternoon? I played tennis. I played golf. Wait a minute. Aren't you getting $175,000 a year? You're on the golf course in the middle of the day, or playing tennis, or driving your kids to school. I thought you're supposed to be working. These people are well paid. So it's a scam, folks. Thank you to Elon Musk for exposing it. I hope that this crusade to get rid of waste in government goes on, because it is everywhere in our government. So we're going to talk to John Fund in a minute. John Fund is one of the smartest political guys I know, and we've got great guests. We'll be on for 2 hours. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. Thank you for tuning in, and we will be right back.
Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Life insurers put life into the things you live for. The new factory that's hiring your neighbors. Maintenance on the bridge that keeps traffic flowing. The paycheck that puts pizza night on the table. Life insurers contribute $8 trillion to communities and local economies through bond purchases and other investments, and protect the financial security of 90 million American families, like yours. See how life insurers put life into America at acli.com. Paid for by the American Council of Life Insurers.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. I hope you're ready for the most dippable chicken in McDonald's history. Dip it in all the sauces. Dip it in that hot sauce in your bag. Dip it in your McFlurry. Your dip is your business. McCrispy strips at McDonald's.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Thank you so much for joining. We have a great audience. Our ratings are very good, and that's because of you. So thank you for carving out some time on a Saturday afternoon. We're here every Saturday on this station, WABC, and many affiliated stations throughout the country from 1 p.m. on Saturday to 3 p.m. And we're one of the very few stations and programs that is live on the weekend. So you're listening to live programming. Every once in a while we pre-record, but we're live. And so I am going to be taking your calls. The reason I like to do the show live rather than pre-record it is so I can take your calls on Saturday afternoon and hear your opinion, because this is freedom of speech radio, and because, frankly, I learn a lot from your opinions on these issues of the day. Now, the issue of the day, and we're going to be taking your calls shortly. And I've carved out a lot of time today to hear from you all. So I want you to call in, especially the ladies. I love it when the ladies call in, and I love it when young people call in too. You know, we have an older audience on the show, and I appreciate the wisdom that comes with age from our older listeners. But if you're a young person, I want to hear from you too, because you're the next generation. It's your country, and you're the ones who are going to be running it in a few years. So that More Money hotline number is 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-WABC. And about call in about 10 minutes, because we'll start taking your calls at the bottom of the hour. And I've devoted a lot of time to hearing from you. And the issue of the day is Elon Musk. Why was he treated so shabbily? Do you believe that he's right, that the fraud is rampant in our government? I happen to think he is. I think he's a hero, and I want to hear from you. If you don't like him, tell me what you don't like about him. But I really admire what he did. And now I want to bring on the show my good friend John Fund, who you all know. John Fund, he's one of the smartest political minds in Washington and around the country. He worked for many, many years as the chief political voice at the Wall Street Journal editorial board. You have to read the Wall Street Journal editorial board, page every day, as I do. And then he's worked many, many years at National Review as their chief political consultant. You see him on Fox News. You see him on Newsmax everywhere. John, thanks for joining.
Pleasure. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, I want to start with Elon Musk. I'm angry, John, because, well, you've been in Washington and in and around Washington maybe about as long as I have been. And I mean, it's you know, the title of my piece on Fox News this weekend is, Did Elon Musk drain the swamp, or did he drown in it? And I want your view of what happened with Elon Musk. So much promise. You know, he came in, good faith effort, and he was laughed at and he was ridiculed.
Well, worse than that, he was blocked at every turn. Mm-hmm. I think the first problem that Elon had is everyone knew that he was a 5-month special government employee.
Right. So they waited him out.
They wait him out.
Yeah.
And, of course, they throw everything but the kitchen sink at him to slow him down. I think that in retrospect, and it's hard to realize this then, he should have announced a team. He should have had more people around him, and he should have appointed his successor when he took over, saying, I may have to step back and go back to SpaceX and Tesla, but this guy's going to be around, and he'll be your worst nightmare because he'll be on this 24/7. In retrospect,
I agree.
There are Doge people that are going to be hanging around. but they're anonymous. They don't have any clout. And frankly, I think Russ Vought will do a good job as the likely new director of DOGE, but he has his hands full. I mean, he has to do a budget. He has to do a lot of other things. So that was the first thing. The other thing is they made a few mistakes at the beginning, and I think what they should have done is they should have had more prep time, talking to people who did the Grace Commission report in the 1980s, talking to think tanks around town. As far as I can tell, Steve, there was no contact between DOGE, Musk, and the existing infrastructure in Washington to root out government waste, fraud, and abuse, such as Tom Schatz's group, and the National Taxpayers Union and the others. Right. I think there needed to be an all-hands-on-deck approach, and there wasn't.
I agree. I think that those are all words of wisdom. I think the problem, too, was that, there was naivete on the part of Elon Musk, and that happens with a lot of businessmen who think, I'm going to come in and clean.
He's admitted he had no idea Washington was this bad.
Exactly. I mean, so it's not a business. It would be great if it were run as a business, but it isn't. And they put on their armor, and from day one, and attacked him every time he talked about the waste that was going on in Washington. And by the way, folks, it's not just Elon Musk who's exposed this. There are government auditing reports that have shown this incredible amount of waste. A group that you and I know about is OpenTheBooks.com, which has found incredible amounts of money. What's that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, there was no direct pipeline or contact that Musk had with these groups. It's sort of like there's a building on fire. It's Washington, D.C., and you send a SWAT team in, and the SWAT team arrives, but there's absolutely no support vehicles around it.
So one of my frustrations that I was just saying, and I think you heard me because you were on the line, was that I think the thing that disgusted me the most was instead of liberals, there are many good government liberals who really do believe in good government. They believe in big government, but they allegedly believe in good government. They attacked him mercilessly every time he exposed, for example, the fact that the foreign aid establishment, literally, not figuratively, literally hundreds of millions of dollars, they couldn't even tell what happened to it. They said, we lost it. I mean, and so you would think that good government people would say, hey, we got to do something about this. Instead they excused it.
Well, Steve, there's a parallel path here. The problem with the government blob in Washington is this. It builds up a lot of barnacles. It builds up a lot of constituency groups, Beltway bandit consulting firms. Lots of people live off of government.
You better believe
Conservatives for many years had the same problem. They supported reform of every government spending program except the Pentagon. Well, we all know the Pentagon is an incredible waster of money.
Good point.
The government procurement system produces weapons that are far more expensive and often outdated by the time they're finally built. And there's a lot of reform that needs to be done in the Pentagon, but conservatives were often silent because they were part of the military-industrial complex syndrome.
Yes.
And
John,
the same thing.
Yeah, this is an excellent point. In fact, I thought right from the start, if I had been advising Elon Musk, I would have said, let's start with the Pentagon, because this is a $1 trillion enterprise. It is a military-industrial complex, and you and I want a very strong, muscular defense. Of course, we want our national security to be funded, but if you've ever been to the Pentagon, you and I have both been over there. I mean, there are cobwebs in some of these offices. Nobody even knows what these people do. It's the biggest bureaucracy in the world.
Well, not only did we not start with the Pentagon, look, I like Pete Hegseth personally, but he does not have the management ability to jump in there, and he didn't have the background to work with Elon Musk to clean up the Pentagon early. And, Hegseth has been bouncing around. He has good intentions, but his management of the Pentagon has frankly been a mess. People being fired, people leaving. So I think the Trump administration so far has missed a chance to really they've gotten rid of DEI at the Pentagon. That's good. They've gotten rid of woke stuff. That's all good. But the actual hard part, government procurement and other things, I don't see the progress yet.
So I want to change directions for a minute. We just got a couple minutes left, but I wanted to ask you about something that you've been following for many, many decades, and I have too. The Congressional Budget Office. Now, most people's eyes are rolling. They have no idea what we're talking about. But these are the people who tell us, if we pass a tax bill, here's how much it's going to cost and so on. And for the 40 years or so we've been following this, John, they're always wrong. They always overestimate how much revenue will be lost from a tax cut, and they always overestimate how much revenue will be raised when they raise taxes, and they always get the growth rate wrong. And why do we rely on these crystal ball gazers who always get it wrong?
Because the real name of that office, the CBO, is the Congressional Budget Defense Office. It is there to defend the budget and the size of the budget. We have to realize if Republicans control Congress and control the executive branch, there is no reason why they don't sweep out the cobwebs and put in people who at least have their models haven't failed every time so far because they've never been tried.
It's amazing. And it kind of disgusts me that it's one thing to say they've been wrong a few times, but they're always wrong and they keep repeating the same mistakes. Now, do you think, where do you think things stand right now, John? You've been following this closely on the tax bill. It's obviously through the House. Now the sausage making factory moves over to the Senate. Do you think that the bill, we were on earlier, on the Kudlow show with Steve Forbes, and I said I'd give the tax bill that came out of the House the grade of a B, and Steve Forbes said he'd give it a grade of incomplete. And I thought that's a better grade than my grade. What do you think? Where do we go from here?
I think the Senate is going to be a little better on spending because they don't have things like the SALT caucus to try to change that egregious blue state subsidy. I think that they're going to mostly keep the existing tax structure in place, and they're going to send it back over to the House. I think the House is going to have a tough time swallowing some of the Senate changes, but President Trump will intervene. He'll lean on people and say failure is not an option, and we're going to pass it. I believe the real challenge, since the bill is a reconciliation bill, a lot of the budget doesn't go through that bill. So, it was unrealistic to think that it was going to lead to massive spending cuts. I think where we have to go next is we have to, in the regular budget, the president has got to decide there has to be fundamental reform of government programs that don't necessarily involve cutting them, but improving the delivery of services. A perfect example is Medicaid. By the way, there's a great amendment that's going to be prepared by Ted Cruz, and John Goodman is advising him. You know John Goodman, the economist.
Of course. On medical savings accounts.
On medical savings accounts, in which Medicaid patients would have the right to get a voucher so they could buy their own version of concierge on-demand medicine rather than having to go to the emergency room, waiting hours and costing all of us hundreds of dollars because emergency room care is the most expensive of all. That's a major change.
It's a great point. And people can be cost-conscious consumers. One of our big issues at Unleash Prosperity, and John works with me at Unleash, he's our political director there, is we should have transparency in how much do things cost when you buy them? How much are the prescription drugs going to cost? Probably too much. How much is that hospital visit going to cost? How much is it going to cost to get an MRI? My wife had an MRI, a few months ago. We got like a $5,000 bill. We thought, hey, isn't this covered by insurance? And, and now we got a bill collector after us. I mean, the whole system of pricing is out of control. But one of the things about Medicaid, John, is that some studies have been done. The Wall Street Journal reported on this week, that people who don't have any health insurance, their health outcomes are no worse than people on Medicaid. So Medicaid isn't actually helping people's health.
Medicaid is such bad medicine, and so few doctors accept Medicaid patients that, frankly, our pets get far better care than our Medicaid patients. That's atrocious. We need to have Medicaid improved, and that costs less, actually, not more, if you structure it properly.
So last question on the way out, John. I've asked all the guests this over the last couple hours, so I want to put you on the line on this one. What are the odds that this bill gets, I'm saying 80% that the bill is signed into law by the end of the summer. What do you think the odds are that this gets done?
Some version of this bill, 95%, because if it fail would basically completely tank the Trump administration, slow the momentum. It would end the Trump term in its first year, and that's not an option. It's going to pass, and Republicans realize that. It's like the final charge in a battle. You have to reach the enemy's trench line, and you have to win.
Yeah, failure is not an option here. We have some ads running at Unleash Prosperity that demonstrate to people that if we don't get this done, the average family is facing a $2,500 tax increase. And John, they don't have the money because after Biden inflation, the idea of a $2,500 increase in taxes is pretty awe-inspiring.
I agree. I think we're going to get it, but we won't get it without an effort by people in your audience to contact a member of Congress and say, we elected you to do this. What good are you if you don't pass it?
Yeah. John Fund, thank you so much for joining us. John Fund from National Review. You know him from his many, many years at the Wall Street Journal and so on. Folks, this is the More Money Show. We're going to take your calls when we get back. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-WABC. We want to hear from you about, do you think that Elon Musk was doing the right thing? What mistakes did he did? Do you agree with me that he's a hero? I think he's a hero that was mistreated by the swamp.
Talk Radio 77. WABC.
Oh, such a clutch pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom, too. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
The GOAT.
Save up to 50% with minimum purchase at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
At the UPS Store, we want to make this summer the summer of shipping, Summer Shipalooza, so you can start crossing items off your must-ship list, like the vintage film camera your college kid needs for class, or the vase you told your mom you would send her ages ago. And with our pack and ship guarantee, your items arrive safe or we reimburse you. So stop by your local store today for everything you need to be unstoppable. Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Available at participating locations. Most locations are independently owned. Product, services, pricing, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable.
So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. And that means thousands of can't-miss deals just in time for summer.
The denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses. I always find something amazing.
Plus, buy it online and pick it up in-store the same day for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
By the time I hit my 50s, I'd learned a few things, like how family is precious. Work can always wait. And 99% of people over 50 already have the virus that causes shingles. Not everyone at risk will develop it, but I did. The painful, blistering rash disrupted my life for weeks. Don't learn about your shingles risk the hard way. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today. Sponsored by GSK.
The main issue I want to talk about is what happened with Doge. My position is that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who came in and did everything they could to expose the fraud of our government, showed us how to balance the budget by getting rid of the waste. And no good deed goes unpunished in Washington. And they were ridiculed. They were blocked by the blob in Washington. This is exactly what's wrong with our federal government, folks. It is why we have to drain the swamp. And I think it was a good faith effort by Elon Musk to drain the swamp. They did everything they could. But sometimes the swamp creatures win. And unfortunately, I think maybe that's what happened here. I hope I'm wrong. And I hope that we continue with this crusade to get rid of waste. Before I take your calls, and I know we got 5 or 6 people lined up. And if you want to call in, we'll be taking your calls to the top of the hour. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222 is the More Money hotline. That's also 1-800-848-WABC. I want to go back to this issue. I want to explain to you folks how they are scoring these bills. They're saying that this bill is going to cost $3 or $4 trillion. The tax bill. No. They're not taking account of the fact that when you cut taxes, good things happen for the economy. That's happened every time. It happened for Reagan and happened for Trump in the first term. By the way, the same people who were wrong by almost $2 trillion in scoring the first bill, they're making the same mistake over again. Isn't that the very definition of insanity when you keep making the mistake over and over again? So the Congressional Budget Office score that says this is going to increase the deficit by $4 trillion is absolutely ridiculous. It's crazy. John McLaughlin said earlier on the show that these tax cuts have about a 70% approval rating. Almost half of Democrats approve of getting this tax bill done. We got to get it done. And we're going to get it done. I want to see the rates lower still. And by the way, I also want to get rid of the death tax. I think the death tax is the most disgusting, outrageous tax. It doesn't raise any money, but it basically says to a family, someone who's spent their whole life building up a family business or a family ranch or a farmer, that they have to turn half of it over to the government. I think it's so unfair. That tax actually hurts the economy more than it helps it. So those are my views on this, but let's get to the callers. So our first caller, and by the way, everyone, I've got the list of people who've called in, and it's great, but they're all men. Come on, ladies. I want the ladies to call in because we got to hear from the women because they run this country. So let's start with Walt. Walt, you're on.
Hello, Steve. How you doing?
Where are you calling in from, Walt?
Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania.
Well, by the way, I'm saluting you because if it weren't for Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris might be president today.
All right. Hey, question. Last few months back on 60 Minutes, Jay Powell was given an interview. Yeah. And basically on 60 Minutes. Yeah. And the previous administration was going crazy with handing out cash here, there, and everywhere. Yes. And they were asking, well, who was paying for it? And Jay Powell turned around and said, well, they just basically printed the money or put it on a computer or whatever. Yes. My question is, and what that did was boost inflation right up through the roof. Yes. My question is, what would happen if the money supply was cut back? There wasn't so much cash being printed. Would that reverse inflation?
Okay. Well, look, this is a great question. Thank you for calling in. Wonderful question. And this is the essence of economics. I'm not going to make this complicated, folks, because it isn't complicated. Only the people at the Federal Reserve could make this complicated. Milton Friedman and Adam Smith taught us that inflation, where you can write this down, inflation is too many dollars in the economy chasing too few goods. So when you have too much money in the economy and too little production of goods and services, you're going to get inflation. And so that's exactly what happened. Joe Biden conspired to create the inflation by spending and borrowing $5 trillion after we'd spent all this money on COVID. And of course, that's just more money flowing into the economy. We didn't see an increase in production. So what happens? The prices go up. So, I have in my pocket a $10 trillion Zimbabwe bill. It's like how many? 13 zeros on this bill. 10 trillion. They keep putting zeros and zeros and zeros on their currency, but this currency is worth about 25 cents. So you don't get rich by printing money. I mean, it's so obvious. I know 95% of you who are listening to the show understand that, but a lot of economists at these Ivy League schools and a lot of the people running the Federal Reserve Board don't understand that. So yes, the reason we had inflation under Biden is we printed too much money and we spent too much money, period. Hard stop. Okay. We got two lines open, by the way. So call in if you want to add your 2 cents or $200 or $2,000 to the discussion. The number is 1-800-848-9222 is the More Money hotline. Let's go to Al.
Hi, Mr. Moore. Nice.
Al, where are you calling in from?
I live in Yonkers.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to say with Elliot Musk with the Doge, I think overall he did a good job cutting waste. I think what bothered him, just a couple quick points, he's become delusioned with the so-called big, beautiful bill. The big, beautiful bill is going to, like you've always emphasized, you know we have to do something about the debt limit as for the generations to come. It's just going to go way up. And I understand why President Trump has to do it. He needs the monies because of Joe Biden screwed everything up. He has to secure the borders and all. But the problem with the big, beautiful bill is when it goes to the Senate, guys like Ron Johnson, who came in with the Tea Party senator in Wisconsin, who in reality we would have never held on to that seat without him running again because it's usually a Democratic state. He's really gonna stick to his principles because he actually has an ideology. He's not like Chip Roy from Texas who barks but doesn't do anything. This is going to be a problem when it runs into the Senate. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. Al, great call. Thank you for calling in. So let me make a couple points on this. First of all, I'm disgusted by the fact that Republicans are not cutting more government spending. And by the way, we're not even talking about cutting spending. We're just saying they're not even really slowing the growth of the spending. So I've mentioned this statistic before, and I'm going to mention it again. For people think, oh, these cruel Republicans, they're cutting all the basic services of government. Over the next 10 years, the federal government is supposed to spend $85 trillion. $85 trillion. The most ever in the history of the world. And under the Republican budget, instead of spending $85 trillion, the federal government will spend $82.5 trillion. So come on, folks. This is a weak effort. And it is just really making me angry that people keep saying, oh, this is savage cuts. There are no cuts. That's the problem. And that's why our debt is out of control. Mr. Producer, do we have any women who've called in? Okay, Kathy, thank you for calling in. Finally, we have one of the ladies calling in. Thank you. And what do you got for us? Where are you calling in from,
Hi,
Kathy?
Steve. Yeah, well, I'm calling in from Florida, but I'm actually not using my real name. Years ago, I was in New York. I was a Democrat. I worked on the Hill. And if people, regular working people, don't know about the atrocities that have occurred in Washington, it's terrible. I have known of many congressional members on the Democratic side who had people that were extra embedded in their payroll programs. I mean, we're talking
wait, hold on. Oh, sorry, Kathy, hold on. Say that again. I didn't quite understand what you just said. Say it again.
They had people who were fake on their payroll.
People who were sick?
No, fake. Can you hear me?
Oh, fake people on the payroll. You mean, in other words, they weren't really working and they were getting a paycheck.
That is correct. They weren't even existing.
Oh, my God.
No, and I experienced that. And that was before computerization in the 80s. I need to tell you that, during the Tip O'Neill era. Okay? Yes. But you had to go down to the bowels of the House of Representatives to actually find out who was on payroll. And I happened to do it one day because I have a great curiosity.
Oh, my gosh.
And I found out a lot of these egregious things that were happening, and I left.
Yep.
And when I moved to Florida, I became a staunch Republican.
Yeah. So I've heard these stories all the time. You know, I worked for Congress for 1 year back in the early 90s. And there were literally, offices, Kathy, where virtually cobwebs in the office, and nobody ever showed up. And whoever that person was, we never saw him or her. We don't even know who it was getting a paycheck from the taxpayers. And, I think that we need to start almost having criminal penalties against people. This is cheating. This is stealing from the taxpayers, Kathy.
Every congressional member becomes rich. Why? Because they keep the treasure chest, and they do very well. And that's a damn shame. Excuse my language. Yeah.
Well, Kathy, great call. You're exactly right. Someone with firsthand knowledge of how Congress works, or should say doesn't work, and a great call. So let's go with Tony.
Hey, Steve Moore. Listen,
Hi.
We need to continue. Hi, Steve. Listen, I love your show. I listened to you the past hour on Larry's show, and you did a great job. Here's what I have to say. We need to continue the rally call for America on the Trump financial program. as we come into voting and all these things we're doing, we need to understand. And here's what we need to know. Number one, Elon Musk was the great American hero.
Yes.
He was the one that said Americans don't want to be cheated. There's cheating going on here. There's cheating, Larry, with all the programs that the Democrats did. And our friend Jerome Powell is cheating Americans, and we don't like it. President Trump needs to stress that in his advertising of the programs. Number two, we don't like our fellow countries that trade with us, our trading partners, to cheat us. We want to be treated fairly.
Yes.
It's a very simple two-step plan. America wants to be treated fairly.
Okay, Tony, I got to let you go because I got like 4 other people on the line, and we're running out of time. Great call, as always. Amanda, we got the ladies finally calling in. Amanda, what do you got for us?
Hello, I'm getting interference. Can you hear me?
I do.
Can you hear me?
Is this Tony?
Mr. Musk
Okay,
is the
go
richest
ahead.
man in the world because he's taking stones out of a mine. He's stealing. He said the people in the government are stealing. Those people have been working for years. Can you hear me?
Yeah, know what, sir, you're going to have to call back in because I'm having a hard time hearing you. If I can't hear you, I don't think our listeners are. Mr. Producer, who else have we got on the line? Bruce? You're on.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I think that they made a big mistake, Trump and the administration, by exposing and making a big advertising that Elon Musk was added this Doge thing. I think they should have kept it more quiet. I think they should have kept it under wraps and found out more information before they went public and before they put Elon Musk under all this, under the spotlight. So the Democrats could, keep hitting him over the top of the head.
Okay, so just hold on for a second. Hold on, because you're making a very good point, and I happen to agree with it. So I just want to interject here. I think you're right. It was too grandiose. I mean, the pictures of Elon Musk with the chainsaw and so on. I think that just kind of rubbed people the wrong way. I think they should have been a little quieter about it, gone through the agencies, and then reported on it at the end of the process. I think it was a little ham-handed, and so I'm agreeing with you, even though I think it was important for Elon Musk to let people know that when you lift up the rock, there are all these little gross critters under the rock of these government programs that are getting rich off of it. But I tend to agree with you that I wish they had been a little bit more systematic about it. I hope Doge doesn't go away. What do you think?
I hope it doesn't either, because I think in every state government it needs to be done, because just recently, the other day, a New York State employee that handles the EBT cards, an account representative, had stolen, I don't know how many hundreds of fraudulent EBT accounts, sold them to a fraud cartel that have stolen over $60 million of New York State tax.
It's unbelievable. I got to let you go, sir. I mean, I'm so glad you called in. And folks, I'm just going to end with this because we only got 45 seconds left. Why do we allow this to happen? Why do we allow people to steal money from our wallets? Because that's what they're doing. They're stealing money from the taxpayers. They're stealing money from our children. There's a reason we're running a $2 trillion debt. I applaud Donald Trump. I applaud Vivek Ramaswamy. I applaud Elon Musk for trying to do what they can to get rid of the waste. But this is a big job, folks. And if we don't get every American behind them, if we continue to tolerate this waste and this stealing and these scams, it's going to continue. And it's not going to be $2 trillion as bad. It's going to be $3 trillion, $4 trillion. And we've got to band together, whether the liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. We have to do something about people stealing money from the federal government. That's not the way it's supposed to work in America. Folks, we will be right back. But right now, we're going to hear from two of the best in the business on making money, Bob and Ryan Payne.
Hey, it's Ryan Payne and Bob Payne from Payne Capital Management, coming to you every week on the More Money Show, talking about the stock market, the economy, your retirement, And Bob, man, oh man, there is not a dull moment on the street of dreams these days, right? One tweet, markets can go way up or they can go way down, depending on if we have tariffs. One day we have deals. One day we don't have deals again. It's been pretty crazy out there. And of course, the markets have been more volatile than normal, I would say.
Well, Ryan, I want to give kudos to all the listeners who are out there, because based on all the research that I read, the average normal investor, people like you and I, have stayed the course and taken advantage of these dips, where the professionals have been sitting on the sidelines, twiddling their thumbs, worried about the uncertainty that's coming from Washington right now.
No, it's pretty wild. There have been stats out there that show that institutional investors panicked when we first had Liberation Day, when we first had the announcement of tariffs. Meanwhile, if you look at retail investors, according to the data, not only do they stay the course, but they actually bought the dip. So I have a feeling here that most people have actually made some money, Bob, over the last couple of weeks. They've stayed invested. For the most part, that's a good thing.
Well, anecdotally, Ryan, I don't know if this is true or not, but it looks like most of the buying is coming from the listeners of this show. They've been listening to us to stay the course, and to follow our strategy is to look at these dips as opportunities, not a time to react or to panic to every new development.
Bob, you're probably giving us way more credit than we deserve, but I will say we have stayed bullish here. We've stayed optimistic. Really critical to stay the course through a lot of this volatility. But I think the problem is when markets are doing really well, or maybe your portfolio is up a lot over the last couple of years, because let's face it, we have been in a big booming bull market. Maybe we've had a couple hiccups along the way, but markets have gone a lot higher. People's net worth has gone up a lot. But I think the problem is when you're making money, you stop paying attention to the details. And I think we're seeing a lot of that right now.
Yeah, you don't want to leave a lot of money on the table, Ryan. We just, one of our listeners just came in and sat down with us, and it turned out their internal cost of their portfolio was in excess of $110,000 a year. That's more than a lot of people make in a year, right?
Yeah, that's incredible. But I think what happens is, especially when you're getting close to retirement, is the risk parameters come off, right? And I think that's what we're seeing right now. Everything's great when you're in a big booming bull market and everything's going up. But as we know about, these times don't last. And unfortunately, when they go the other way, there's no warning sign, right? There's no bell that gets rung to let you know that, hey, it's time to get more conservative. And I think right now that's probably one of the bigger issues we're seeing when people are building their portfolios for retirement.
I think you're talking about my fellow baby boomers, Rye. Most of the retirees in this country are baby boomers. And you know what? I've been doing this for 50 years. Never in my career have I seen where it's a good idea for a retiree to have an aggressive portfolio, as aggressive as they had when they were in their 20s and 30s.
Well, that's what happens, right? A lot of it just becomes a drift in your portfolio. Maybe you had 50, 60% in the stock market, but now the market's up a lot over the last couple of years. Now maybe you have 70% in the stock market. And you don't even know it. You don't know the risk that you have. And maybe your portfolio is concentrated in all those hot stocks, those Magnificent Seven stocks, whether it's NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, etc. Well, it's all great when it's going up. But as you and I know, Bob, trees don't go to the sky. And at some point, you will have a massive sell-off or correction. And when that happens, a lot of us are going to be in a bad position.
Well, as I've learned over the years, it's more about psychology than it is about finance. And if you're an aggressive investor, you feel very comfortable until your portfolio tanks 30%. Then you might think, well, maybe Mike Tyson had it right. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
And that's the problem, right? Is we don't know when the next downturn is going to happen. And that's why when it comes to investing and building your portfolio for retirement, you have to be proactive, not reactive. You can't wait. And when things are going really well, that's the time to be proactive. And nobody wants to be, because they see their portfolio going up and up and up.
Well, my favorite Bobism is time passes and markets operate. And neither cares how you think or how you feel. So, you're going to have this uncertainty about the future. And the only way to combat uncertainty, Rye, is to be a well-diversified portfolio. Now, that's an overused term, but you've got to be diversified in this environment.
Yeah, and there's only a couple things that you can really control. Let's face it. We can't control the stock market. We can't predict it. My crystal ball broke like 25 years ago when I got into business, unfortunately. I can't tell you what's going to happen next. But we know, number one, you can control the risk. You need to understand what's your downside risk. Most of us don't know what that is. Number two, you need to understand the fees on your portfolio, and a lot of them are hidden. And if you have high costs, like I just did an analysis for a client, and we figured that they were paying almost $100,000 in fees they didn't know about. That's $2 million over the next 20 years that we could cut out by just running a lower cost strategy. And thirdly, Bob, it's income, right? Most portfolios aren't generating enough consistent income, which is much more reliable than the ups and downs of the market.
So, Rye, if I hear you correctly, what you're telling me is you've got to look at your portfolio at least once a year and figure out, am I getting the income that I deserve? Am I getting the highest income? Do I have the lowest fees? And why do I want a partnership with the IRS? Am I paying the least amount of taxes? Why should I pay unnecessary taxes in my portfolio?
You say this all the time. It's not what you make, it's what you take. You have to really look at not only what are my gains, but what's going in my pocket after taxes I can pay my bills with, because you can't pay your bills with pre-tax returns. So all this stuff has to be figured out. And the more that you can create certainty in your portfolio, and that's actually creating income that comes in every year, because we don't know what the market's going to do every year, keeping the fees low and keeping the taxes low has a huge impact on whether you make it through retirement or don't. And most of us don't run that analysis.
Well, just keep in mind, Rye, that your expectations of what the markets are going to do go hand in hand with your longevity. And, thanks to the baby boomers, we're living longer. We're living longer than the previous generation. Your generation is going to live longer than the baby boomers. I don't think a lot of people are taking into consideration how long they're going to live and how long their money has to last.
Just because maybe last year was a good year in the stock market, not every year is going to look like that. What you have to ask yourself is, well, there's going to be a couple years where there's big drawdowns in the market. How does that affect my retirement? If I'm invested the way I am today and the market sells off big tomorrow, is that going to be detrimental to what I live off of on a monthly basis? And I'd say for most of us, we haven't run that analysis. And that's a big problem, especially right now, because things are going well.
Well, they're going well, but they're even better if you're going to be a smart investor right now, because as I always say, slow and steady wins the race. And when I mean slow and steady, I mean every year collecting dividends that are going up, every year collecting income that's going up on your bonds that are rolling over. Right now, we have one area of the market that's outperformed, which is creating tremendous opportunity in dividend-paying stocks, tax-free municipal bonds, and treasury yields. You've got to take advantage of this opportunity that the market's giving you right now.
Yeah, it's time to be proactive, not reactive. And you're thinking to yourself, I get it, Bob Ryan. I need to understand what my fees are on my portfolio. I need to understand the income on my portfolio and risk. Well, here's your shot to do it. We leave 10 slots open. If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, Bob and I will run for you our total financial master plan, and we'll do that with no obligation or cost. It's a full holistic review. We literally look at everything. We're going to go as far as building you your own personalized financial portal. There's not a firm out there that's going to do this work up front. We're going to hone in on every financial issue you need to address today. We're going to give that income plan for retirement. How do you draw from Social Security? How do you draw from your portfolio, factoring in inflation and not running out of money? We're going to build you that dynamic income plan. We're going to look at diversification. Markets have been wild over the course of the last couple of months. Has your portfolio been up and down like a yo-yo, or have you been sitting with way too much money in cash, CDs, money market funds, paralysis by analysis? We're going to put together a full investment game plan, tie it to your goals, show you how to grow your wealth, but most importantly, protect it over the rest of your life. And we're going to look at fees and taxes. Wall Street loves to sell you high cost, tax inefficient products, whether it's private equity, annuities, mutual funds, life insurance products, brokerage products. We're going to do a deep dive of every investment you own. We're going to show you how to reduce the cost and optimize your portfolio for taxes. It's not what you make, it's what you take. You'll get a full tax playbook. We literally have 10 slots open for the whole show if you saved over $1 million for your retirement.
All you have to do is text or call 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692, or just simply call 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC. If you're one of our next 10 callers, you've saved over $1 million for your retirement. Our team of financial advisors and certified financial planners will help you to take the uncertainty out of your portfolio and be certain that you can achieve your goals and your dreams with your values. But you're not going to have a plan if you're not one of our next 10 callers, so don't miss out. Give us a call or text 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. Or again, just simply call 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC.
If you want to learn more about myself and Bob and our firm, Payne Capital Management, of course, that's PAYNE. Simply go to BeBullish.com. That's BeBullish.com. Stay tuned. We got more money coming your way.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Nicole Byer, helping you make those rooms flyer. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild! Like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Ooh, fierce! This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Welcome back, folks. This is the second hour of the More Money Show. Actually, it's sort of the third hour because I was able to fill the big shoes of Larry Kudlow during his 12 o'clock hour because he was out in California at the Reagan Library and is flying back today to the East Coast. So that was a big privilege to fill in for the great Larry Kudlow. He will be back next week live. But I wanted to just make a quick opening riff if I could. And then I have three outstanding guests coming up, including Jonathan Turley, who you know from Fox News, one of the top legal analysts, and Senator Kramer from North Dakota is going to talk about what's going on with the energy situation and a few others. So we have a great second hour lined up and appreciate everybody on what's turned out to be kind of so far a rainy kind of gloomy Saturday, but it's going to be nice tomorrow. So today's a good day to do some house cleaning and to listen to the radio. And I appreciate you being with us. We're so thrilled by our ratings. I just was up in the New York office at WABC, and we went over the ratings, and they're very good. So I appreciate the regulars of the show. And if you're new to the show, we are live. We are live and we are in color, unlike almost every other show that you're going to be listening to on the weekend. So let me just start with a couple of quick points. One is I like the tax cut. I think it's critically important that we pass that. And I think that Speaker Johnson did an amazing job. But come on, why don't we go for the gold here? And this is a point that I've made over and over on this show each week, that we're not that far away from the flat tax, just a flat rate tax with almost no deductions. You can fill out your tax code on a tax return on a postcard. You would have a one rate. You'd have no deductions. You just get a deduction for yourself and your kids. And you just pay a flat rate of about 18 or 19%, or you could even make it two rates. Maybe you could have 18% and 25% for the richer people, but getting rid of all the loopholes. Now here's the thing that's so interesting about this proposal is that today only 9% of Americans, 1 out of 11 Americans, itemize deductions. So most of you listen to the show probably don't itemize your deductions. And for you, losing deductions doesn't cost you anything because you still get the standard deduction. But the people who do get the deduction and take deductions are the millionaires and billionaires for the most part. Almost all of the revenue loss from deductions goes to people in the very, very top income strata of the United States. Now, I'm not for soaking the rich, but I don't have a problem with lowering the rates for the rich people, but also making them pay their fair share by getting rid of deductions. Now, that would mean no charitable deductions, no state and local tax deduction, no deduction for owning, municipal bonds. And, you wouldn't get a mortgage deduction, but you'd pay a much lower rate. And I wonder what you all think about that bargain. Would you take it? I would in a nanosecond. If I could make my tax code much simpler and my tax return very easy to comply with, I wouldn't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars with tax attorneys and accountants figuring out how much I owe. It would be so simple. It would be a lot less cheating on taxes because it would be so simple. Here's how much money you made. You get your two deductions, you and your children, and then you pay a flat rate on that. And that low rate would be explosive for growth. So I want Donald Trump to go for the gold here. Let's not just fiddle with the tax code. Let's fix it once for all. Now, I might be pipe dreaming here, and you may think, Steve Moore's stuck up in the clouds, but the evidence shows very clearly that if we did this, it would be worth trillions of dollars to the U.S. economy. We would grow like crazy. Can you imagine if we had an 18% tax rate on all our business income and all our individual income? Everybody in the world would want to come here. I mean, they want to come here anyway, but now they'd have an extra incentive to come here. So I really, really love that idea. And I would love to see Trump make the case to give a nationally televised speech, Mr. President. You are at your peak of your popularity right now, and make the case to the American people why the Trump flat tax would be good for America. We can do this. We're within shouting distance of it. And let's not blow this opportunity. Now, if they can't get that done, we do have to make the Trump tax cut permanent. But I'm saying go for the gold, go bold or go home. My next guest is a guy I've admired for many, many years, as I know most of you listening to the show have. Jonathan Turley is one of the top legal minds in the country. He is one of the great defenders of the First Amendment and the most important part of our Constitution, which is the right to free speech, and has a wonderful book that came out. I think it's been out about a year from now. It's become a big mega bestseller called The Indispensable Right, Free Speech in an Age of Rage. You see him all the time, obviously, on Fox News. He's a Fox News contributor. So, Jonathan, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Thank you for having me, Steve. It's a mutual admiration society, so thank you so much.
Well, I'm the economist and you're the lawyer, so this is going to be interesting. You're going to have to teach me some legal theory here because I don't understand the law always. But let's just start with your book, The Indispensable Right to Free Speech. As just a pedestrian in this, I just have found it kind of remarkable that mostly people on the left, but some people on the right, have so disparaged the right to free speech. They believe that, if I were to offend you, that somehow that's speech that can be outlawed or condemned. And I'm just surprised that the old civil libertarian left is the one that has really made aggressive attacks on free speech.
No, you're absolutely correct. I share your surprise, and it's unfortunately the reality that the greatest threats to free speech today are coming from the left. And this anti-free speech movement in the United States really came from higher education and has metastasized throughout the country, where students are being taught that free speech is a threat, that it's harmful, that it has to be controlled. When my book, The Indispensable Right, came out, there were 4 books that came out that were anti-free speech, including one where a Michigan law professor said that free speech is the Achilles heel of the United States. One of my colleagues has a book out where she calls
Say that again.
This is a Michigan law professor who says that free speech is the Achilles heel. And you also have one of my colleagues is leading a movement to amend the First Amendment because she says that it's aggressively individualistic and free speech should be balanced against equity.
Right. And so this is basically well, they like to use the word hate speech. I hadn't heard that term until, 5 or 6 years ago, but now I hear that term a lot. I don't even know what they mean by that. That's something they don't agree with?
Well, this is with disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, and hate speech. There are all these different rationales for silencing other people. But that's one of the reasons the subtitle on Indispensable Right is An Age of Rage, because this isn't our first. We've been through these ages in which we turn on each other and try to silence each other. And many of the terms we use are the same. And so these are the same voices we've heard throughout history to justify silencing others. And we've been able to go through these cycles, but it's a dangerous pretense, a dangerous assumption that we're going to get through this one. We've never faced the anti-free speech movement we're facing now. I just got back not long ago from Berlin, where I spoke at the World Forum. I was one of 2 free speech figures. And, this was a group of EU officials and others who were red hot after Vance's speech in Munich, in which he denounced Europe over free speech. And it was the most anti-free speech gathering I've ever seen. And they are committed to fighting free speech.
This is in Germany.
Well, it's the EU. The EU is trying to use its Digital Services Act to force people like Elon Musk to censor Americans. And there are Americans encouraging them to do that, including Hillary Clinton.
So Peggy Noonan, who I always read her column. I don't always agree with it, but I know Peggy, and I've always find her columns fascinating. And she had a column, 6 months ago or so, that she always writes lines that always stick out to me. And she said, somehow in America, these young Americans have come up with this idea that you have the right not to be offended. And I thought that's a really, you know what, Jonathan, I have the right to offend you, don't I?
Yes. And it's a shame because these students are learning in an environment very different from the one that you and I attended in college. I went to the University of Chicago, and it was an awakening for me. I mean, when I went to that campus, it was like walking into the bar scene in Star Wars. It was like I had never seen any people like this before. I was living in a cooperative, and downstairs, the Spartacus League, Trotskyites were meeting. Upstairs, we had militant vegans. Next door, we had crazy libertarians. And I loved every minute of it because I was fascinated by people who could see what I was seeing and come to different conclusions. Students, they just don't have that. They're taught that free speech is harmful, that you shouldn't be triggered. And they have purged from faculties, conservatives, libertarians. At places like Harvard, less than 3% of the faculty are now Republican.
So whatever happened, I think it was Clarence Thomas who, in one of these cases a number of years ago, recited the old saw, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me.
Yeah, and that is lost today because you see the response of students today that they truly believe that they should not be triggered by the views of others. Yeah, but there is an interesting thing happening, and I raised this in Berlin when one of the officials at Ireland confronted me, and I said, you know what? You guys just tried to pass the most draconian anti-free speech law in your history, and you were stopped, but they were stopped by young people in Ireland. And I think that what the left is reeling from is that younger people are beginning to step forward and say, actually, you know what? We want free speech.
The younger people said that.
Yeah, and you're beginning to see that. So we have a lot of kids in college who unfortunately have been warped in their views, but there's also an element in these younger generations that are saying, actually, we sort of like this thing.
So there's a reason. I'm not the student of the Constitution as you are, but there's a reason that this was the First Amendment, right? These were regarded as the most important rights, and I just find it just bewildering and depressing that for example, the old even the American Civil Liberties Union isn't really that good on free speech anymore.
No, it's not, and your point is a good one. One of the things I mentioned in the book is that the most revolutionary act of the American Revolution that was embodied in the First Amendment. I mean, that no country in history had ever put words like that on paper. But the thing that people have to remember is none of that came from Great Britain. Many of the things in the Constitution actually did come from Great Britain in one form or another, but not free speech. The British have never and still don't protect free speech the way we do. And so at the time, it almost sprang from the head of Zeus. The framers believed that free speech was a natural right. And this is something that gets me in trouble with a lot of law professors today who don't believe in natural law. But they believed that free speech was a gift from God, that free speech belongs to human beings so they could be fully human. And that's what was so revolutionary.
So I want to make ask you one more question about this. Then I do want to ask you about the Supreme Court case this week. Again, you're the student of the Constitution, but I seem to recall that, when this free speech First Amendment was debated, one of the reasons that the founders thought it was such an important inclusion of our Constitution was precisely to protect speech that might offend another person and to make sure that people could have free expression.
That's right. You don't need a First Amendment to protect popular speech.
Exactly. Right.
And, they wanted to protect dissenters. They wanted to protect people that couldn't speak otherwise. And that's what was so revolutionary. And obviously it's revolutionary today because you have all these people, including the EU, trying to roll back on free speech.
Well, thank you for writing this book. It's called The Indispensable Right, and it's about the First Amendment. And I wish every high school and college student would read that book. Now, can I switch gears with you for our last few remaining minutes? You and I were talking offline a little bit earlier this week about the big Supreme Court case this week with respect to Trump and tariffs. I'm not a big tariff guy. I love this president and so much of what he wants to do, but I was a little queasy about the idea of the government, this president or any president having a kind of unregulated authority to impose tariffs, and tariffs are taxes. And so explain to me where you stand on this and what's going on with this, because I know our listeners are confused. First, the court came out and said, Trump cannot impose these tariffs, and then there was a stay. And so what's the state of affairs, and where do you fall on this one?
Well, I'm not a big fan of tariffs. Milton Friedman sort of ruined me at the University of Chicago. But
me too.
The fact is the lower court decision by the International Court of Trade is a good faith decision. It's well reasoned. You can disagree with it, but I expect that many judges will agree with it. IEEPA, the underlying law, does not mention tariffs. It's never been used for tariffs. It's designed for an emergency. And what the administration is basically saying is that the entire economy is an emergency. And that's not going to go over well with a lot of conservative judges and justices. They may have a real hard time, in my view.
So can I just interrupt you for 1 second on this? Because you're making a very important point here, Jonathan. And by the way, my guest is Jonathan Turley of George Washington Law School and one of the great defenders of our freedoms and liberties. But the whole issue here really is one of, to me, almost like checks and balances of our, that the president, and by the way, this would apply to any Democrat. If Kamala Harris was president, or, Bill Clinton or Joe Biden, if they tried to raise taxes without congressional approval, I think a lot of conservatives would be howling in protest. And so I think we need to be fair-minded in terms of it doesn't really matter who the president is. It's really the principle at stake here.
That's exactly right. And this interpretation of the statute runs against the grain. And I think that they could very well lose in front of the Supreme Court, which is why in my column this weekend, I said, they need to look at a dual track here. The president does have authority to issue tariffs. He did that in his first term successfully. It's under laws like the Trade Act. And these are laws that are very deferential to the president. What the administration wanted, and I get this, is that they saw IEEPA as a way of doing a very fast and sweeping attack on tariffs. I get that. It was a 3-point shot. Right. It just bounced off the rim. And so what you need is to make sure that you proceed under the successful avenue you did before, but also Congress needs to look at this, because regardless how you feel about tariffs, the president is closing in on what looked like very favorable trade agreements with other countries. Right. And so even if you oppose tariffs, this is not the time to pull the rug from under him.
I agree.
Congress needs to find a way to convey to these countries, we've got the president's back. You better negotiate. Because we'll work out the authority lines here. Yes. But he's got authority.
I think, Jonathan, you've nailed it, my friend. We just have 1 minute left, so I wanted to ask you, can you kind of forecast for us, do you think this will go up to the Supreme Court? And how do you think that the court would rule on this? I mean, as you just said earlier, it's interesting because some of the more conservative justices, they're kind of considered the originalists who look at the text of the Constitution, and they would seem to be the ones who would be most likely to, strike down the president's power to do this. So how do you see it playing out?
I think that if they succeed, it would be a Burma shave at best. I think that I would, if I was forced to put money on this, I'd have to bet against the administration, because you're going to have justices there who have long interpreted statutes in this way narrowly. Keep in mind, the Constitution itself gives the authority over tariffs to Congress. So there's the center of gravity here is in Article 1. Not Article 2. Yes. And so all of those things are going to work against the administration if they go in front of the Supreme Court.
But, and just to end this then, I think you made the key point here, which is that Congress has to step up and make this declaration. And we'd be curious to how many Democrats might side with Trump and say, look, he needs this authority to be able to to negotiate good deals with China and the UK and now the European Union. And that may be the way out, right?
I think so. And the president's right about the need to renegotiate. We need a shock therapy. Right. It's just that right now it's more shock than therapy. But we need these agreements to come down. And Congress can do that. And by the way, the Democrats got to be careful because the Republicans could break this up and move tariff bills on particular countries like China. And then for Democrats in Michigan and other states to vote against those tariffs that are supported by unions is going to be a big ticket problem for them looking at midterms next year.
Great point. Well, Jonathan Turley, you are a national asset. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your weekend to join us on the More Money Show. And folks, we will be right back. Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on a Saturday afternoon. Such a privilege to be with you. And now one of my best friends in all of Congress, Kevin Cramer, the senator from the great state of North Dakota. Senator, is this you're in the middle of your second term?
I am. I just started my second term. So in the Senate. I was in the House for 6 years prior to the Senate.
Yeah. So he has been one of the mainstays of the conservative movement in the Senate. And, I always say that, 4 or 5 of my favorite senators are Senator Cramer. I love Senator Rand Paul. I love Senator Ron Johnson. I like Mike Lee. I just wish there were more fiscal conservatives in the Senate, as I'm sure you do. I want to start with a civics question that I get asked all the time. And my friends in California ask this. So I hate to put you on the spot here, Senator, but you're from the great state of North Dakota. And tell our audience, why are there 2 Dakotas as states?
Yeah, great question. Well, that's a good question. It's a big plot of land. Each of them is a pretty big plot of land, but neither one of them together even add up to Alaska or Montana, a neighbor to the west. I just think they won't. I don't know. I actually don't know why they did.
Okay, we're going to look that up. Next time I have you on, you're going to have an answer to that question. Because my friends in California, where there's 40 million people, they say, why do we get only 2 senators in North Dakota with what do you have, less than 1 million?
That's a different. And to the people of California, I'd say you're welcome. Because thank God there are 2 Dakotas and half.
There you go. There you go. Can we have a Northwest Dakota?
Yeah.
Then we'd really have a conservative. So the people of North Dakota are conservative, aren't they?
They are. They're very conservative. Although I will tell you, Steve, populism, has been alive and well in North Dakota long before Donald Trump. I mean, Theodore Roosevelt's presidential libraries being built here, and of course he was a populist. And we have a state-owned bank, State Bank of North Dakota, that's literally owned by the state. We have a state mill and elevator. We early in our foundation as a state, we were fighting against the big corporations, the big ag corporations in Minneapolis and the big banks in Minneapolis. So we have a major sort of populism streak, but we are fiscally naturally conservative, and we are certainly socially conservative.
Salt of the earth people. So as you know, this is our flagship station is WABC in New York. So we have people throughout the New York metropolitan area, many of whom I would bet, Senator, have never been to North Dakota. So sure. I've been there many times, a couple times with you, and tell us, so you're basically you've traditionally been an agricultural state, but you've turned into an energy powerhouse.
We have. So with the Bakken, and really, there's always been oil here. We've had oil for a long time. Hess, for example, has been producing oil in North Dakota for over 50 years. But with the advent of hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling, Harold Hamm cracked that code and unleashed tons of light, sweet crude oil and millions and millions of barrels, really billions of barrels. And so we've been the number 2 or number 3 producer in the country only behind Texas for a number of years.
Amazing.
And it is amazing.
You're not ahead of Oklahoma, are you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we blew by Oklahoma. Wow. We even blew by Alaska and California, yeah. So, we are the only state other than California or than Texas now that produces a little more than we do is New Mexico, and that has really a lot to do with unleashing federal lands, and that was Donald Trump, freeing up more federal lands in his first term. So, so we contribute mightily to the economy of the country, and which is why by the way, the founders created the United States Senate was so that every state with a lot of resources, but not a lot of people, had some equal power in at least one of the two chambers, and that's why we have a Senate.
That's a great explanation for it. The founders were geniuses, weren't they? So
yes, they were.
You used the word hydraulic fracturing, and I bet a lot of our listeners on the East Coast are, fracking, it's a terrible thing. Oh, no, my gosh, it's going to cause the end of the world, and we're going to have earthquakes, and we're going to have pollution, and all of these things. So, will you disabuse the listeners of this show to that idea that fracking is a bad thing? I think it's one of the great innovations of all time.
Well, it definitely is, because we were dealing with peak oil prior to this, and now instead of being dependent on Saudi Arabia or Russia or African nations or Venezuela, we're now not just independent, but we can export as well and do. And that was one of the things we did even in the Obama administration, was to free up the ability to export oil, and that's been a game changer, because now the United States is the price maker, not the price taker in all things oil and gas, and so. And not to mention what it's done for us, Steve, in the areas of national security. I mean, it's being energy secure is as good as being nationally secure.
It's a no-brainer, and you're so right. And I've been so impressed when I've been to. What's the town? Williston? What's the town where they? So
this references the Williston Basin, the traditional basin, and Williston is sort of the heartbeat of the Bakken. No question about it. Yeah.
And so. You also have a lot of other resources. You have some of the best farmland in the world in North Dakota, and you have minerals, right? Coal and other minerals.
Well, we do. We have coal and produce a lot of coal for electricity, cheap, and it's getting cleaner all the time and abundant, but also to minerals. So it's funny you bring that up today, because just earlier this week, we were out we being Senator John Hoeven, Governor Kelly Armstrong, and Congresswoman Julie Fedorchak. We only have one, as you know. And we were all.
You have more senators than congressmen.
We have, I used to always say, I don't know why it takes two senators to do one person's job, but anyway, it takes 36 at least or so in Texas. But that said, we've just witnessed the signing of a deal between a now retired coal mine called Westmoreland Coal. They've used up all the coal, and they're reclaiming all the land. And their facility, they signed an agreement with a company called Talon Metals. They mine the taconite, which is made largely of nickel and copper in Minnesota, and they're going to process that into, obviously a finished product, but also extract the critical minerals, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of critical minerals even in the coal, and in the now burned coal, the coal ash, as they call it, or residuals, has a lot of those minerals, and so they're going to be extracting some of those critical minerals right here in North Dakota.
That's awesome. We've done a study at Unleashed Prosperity. That's the group, as you know, Senator, that Art Laffer and Steve Forbes and I started with Larry Kudlow many years ago. But we have a new study by one of the top geologists in the country who estimates are you ready for this? Are you sitting down, Senator? $12 trillion. $12 trillion of mineral resources in this country that we've not been able to go after, mostly because of environmentalists. But that's a huge treasure chest. And think of all the federal money that we could bring in terms of tax dollars if we were to go after this stuff.
Well, particularly, and add to that, if some of it's on federal land, and I know some of it is under federal land, if you allow that mining, those are our assets. Those are the taxpayers' assets. We should be getting the tax benefit from that and the revenue benefits from that. And with modern technologies, Steve, you create a lot of great jobs, obviously, and a lot of wealth, and that creates a lot of tax revenue. But you also have, with modern technologies, ways to do it much cleaner. And I guarantee you, if we do that, we will produce those critical minerals in a much more environmentally friendly way than anybody else we're buying them from today.
I agree.
And we won't even use slave labor.
So we only have about 3 minutes left, Senator, so I appreciate so much you coming on. This is Senator Kramer of the great state of North Dakota. I want your take on the big beautiful, and we turn to the Senate. I guess when you guys you get back in town on Tuesday, is that when you come back?
Monday. We'll be in Monday.
Monday. Okay. So now we go down to the home stretch. I would love it if Donald Trump had a bill on his desk to sign on the 4th of July. I would love that. But I know you're one of the strong conservatives who wants more cuts and I want to see more cuts, but we got to get this thing done. Is there a path to victory here?
I believe there is, Steve. First thing I think we have to do, what we have to do as conservatives, pro-growth conservatives, is understand that however they score this bill, they being the Congressional Budget Office and others that score it, don't adequately recognize the growth potential with a tax policy like this, right? They always underscore it. We have to, as conservatives, trust it. We're free marketers. We get that. There's that. On the other front, I do think we can find some more savings, but we also need to make sure Mike Johnson always has at least a 1-vote margin to pass the bill out of the House. So that balancing act is what we're all about. I think that Ron Johnson and Rick Scott are right. I think they should scream from the rafters and get as many get as many conservative principles as possible. But at the end of the day, when it's a binary choice, the only two numbers that matter are 50 and 218. That's the number of people in the House and Senate.
That's right. So you have is it 53 Republicans in the Senate?
It is.
53. Okay. So we've got my friend Rand Paul, I'm going to put him down as a no.
Put him down as a no.
So that gives you 52.
Undecided, but you never know.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so you feel good that we can get 50. But by the way, just to explain to our listeners, if you get to 50, then the vice president, J.D. Vance, would cast the tie-breaking vote. So you only need 50, right. Not 51. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That is right. And it's going to always be hard, just like it was in the House. It looked in the House like the whole thing was going to collapse, and then, of course, you come up on the midnight hour, and suddenly you have one more vote than you thought, because that's just in human nature. Is that you go to the deadline fighting for everything you can get. It's like a football team; they don't stop playing, in the third quarter. So. You're going to see that happening. It should happen. But I do believe at the end of the day, conservatives of all types, when you look at a binary decision between passing it or not passing it's always going to be better from the conservative perspective.
Yeah. Senator Cramer, thank you so much for joining us. That's Kevin Cramer from North Dakota, one of the staunch fiscal conservatives. We don't have enough of them in the Senate. My next guest is David Bahnsen, who is an investor extraordinaire. He is also the author of many books. By the way, for those of you who are regular listeners of the More Money Show and the Kudlow Show, you know that I talk a lot of times about his books. He's got many of them. The two favorites of mine, and you want to get these, are Full Time, Work and the Meaning of Life, and the other is, I don't remember which one. Oh, that's the most recent book, and then the other book that I have at my bedside, because I just love turning to it and finding kernels of wisdom. It's called "There's No Free Lunch: 250 Economic Truths," and it's a great book on understanding how the economy works. So, David Bahnsen, thanks so much for joining this afternoon.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve.
So, a lot I want to talk to you about. Let's start with your area of expertise, which, of course, is the markets. And I have to say I'm a little befuddled by what's happened the first 6 months, first 4 or 5 months of this year, where we had, some euphoria when Trump was elected, and then we went through the tariff turmoil and the market kind of crashed. I'm standing on the ledge of my building ready to jump. And then all of a sudden, there's some trade peace and some trade talks that looked like they were leading to deals. And then the market made a nice comeback. And now we're kind of in that undecided mode. So how do you read things?
Well, look, I think that you've set up the sequence there really well. Originally, what I think the market priced the day after the election was the accurate fact that on that day, the second that Kamala Harris had conceded the election, that the Trump tax cuts were all going to get extended, that risk was removed. So then now there's no upside in the Trump tax cuts getting extended, because that was priced in 24 hours after the election. There was no world. There was no world in which a Republican president with a Republican-controlled Senate and a Republican majority House was not going to extend the very tax cuts that exact same president had himself passed 8 years earlier.
So what do you put, just to interrupt for 1 second, what do you put the odds at right now that we have a bill signed, sealed, and delivered before the end of the year?
100%.
100. Wow. Okay. I put it at 90.
That we have a bill. What the Senate does to the current bill, I'm actually one who's hoping they make some changes. And even if there is, I don't think it's a very high percentage chance, but even if this particular bill totally falls apart, which it won't, I would say it's 100% that they end up
failure is not an option.
Figuring a new plan.
Right. Yeah, and failing would be catastrophic for the party and for the country.
And by the way, Steve, if all we were talking about was just extending the Trump tax cuts, and it was December 29th, they would have Democrats voting for it.
That's a great point. So, what do you make of the bill? Is it big? Is it beautiful?
No, it's necessary to extend the Trump tax cuts. It's wonderful. It is beautiful. 100% business expensing, enhanced R&D deductibility, enhanced interest expense to promote business growth. Those things are good. The spending, I just don't know when. I don't know when we're going to be able to address these runaway deficits if it isn't when we have Republican majorities. And so I do wish that they were doing more to reform Medicaid, more, they're doing a good job getting rid of some of these crony tax credits, but they need to do more.
Couldn't agree more with that. I'm surprised, if you look at these numbers, I mentioned this earlier on the show, I'll recite them for you, David, because they're sort of jaw dropping, that, under the current baseline, and I'm within $1 trillion, but the baseline for the Congressional Budget Office over the next 10 years is somewhere around $86 trillion. And under this Republican budget, the mean, evil-spirited, heartless Republican budget, instead of spending $86 trillion, we spend over $84 trillion.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's right. There's nothing in there that's cruel or heartless. The issue, what's cruel or heartless, is that we're not reducing the deficit more for the sake of our children and our grandchildren.
Now, we've been making the case, obviously, that one of the most important factors in bringing that debt burden down is growing the economy. I know you believe in that. You're a growth hawk, as we are. But that may not be quite enough. We still need to – you can't have over $500 billion a year in fraud. $500 billion. I mean, David, you're an expert on private companies. I mean, what kind of a company with, let's say, an $8 million budget with $500,000 of fraud could possibly stay in business?
Well, obviously, no one could. I mean, I guess if any company was going to survive $500 billion of fraud, it would have to be a company that has $6 trillion, of annual receipts. But or the ability to compulsory tax every citizen of the country. It's not sustainable. Look, there's so many things that have to be done, and I don't know how you can get them done if you're not even willing to start talking about them. The Medicaid conversation is a very important one because I think most Americans will understand if we make the argument Medicaid existed for those who were destitute, for those who were below the poverty line. And to now have something growing to $700 billion that is being essentially used as a middle-class health care subsidy is not right. And I think that we have to reform that. And there's other bigger things we're going to end up having to do. The politics of it are probably not right now. But there's a lot of big things, Steve, we're going to have to do with Social Security and Medicare as well.
So you started this conversation by noting that, we got the big boom in the stock market at the start of when Trump was elected because people were optimistic. And I think you made the case, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that sort of the pro-growth initiatives of Trump are a bit priced into the market. So I guess pivoting back to how you make more money, because that's what this show is about, is the is the fact that the Trump tax cut is going to pass, is that all priced in? In other words, I've been saying to people, as soon as we get this Trump tax cut bill, the market's going to really go on a tear. But you're sort of saying they've already figured this out and it's already priced in. But then you have the other big variable, David, as you know. I'm talking to David Bahnsen, one of the best investors in the country. What about the trade deals? Are those priced in, or how does the market perceive this?
Yeah, so basically to your first question, Steve, I'm sad to say that there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the good parts of the tax bill are priced in, which basically is extending the Trump tax cuts. Now, I don't know that the 100% business expensing is fully appreciated by all the companies that are going to benefit from it. But the broad market, there's not a sort of boomed valuation coming from that.
Okay.
That was table stakes, and markets do that. They are discounting mechanisms. They price things in. The tariff issue you bring up, and trade deals and so forth. Now that becomes a more upside and downside, right? Markets don't know exactly how it will play out. So there is a possibility of good deals to open up new markets for more trade, and that's underappreciated by markets. It could be a tailwind, but then, of course, there's always the headwind risk, because he could tweet on any moment that he wants to go back to 50% tariffs on Europe again. So markets have an uncertainty to deal with. And in addition to the uncertainty of trade deals, there's uncertainty of what's happening in the economy while we wait.
So last point we've only got about 2 minutes left, David. I wanted to just swing over to your great book on the value of work, which I always boast of because I think it's so wonderful, and I couldn't agree. I love books that I agree with, and the virtue of work, which is what your book is about. Just very quickly, because as I said, we only have about 2 minutes. One of the big issues, obviously, is the coming of robotics and how factories are going to be different, how we're going to lose a lot of truck driving jobs because artificial intelligence and robots will be driving the trucks and so on. How do you see that? How do you see that affecting American workers over the course of the next 25 years?
Well, Steve, I'll do this really quickly. I want people to really think about history here, to understand that we've gone through moments where things totally changed because of advancement in technology, advancement
like tractors,
in capability.
Yeah.
Well, the Industrial Revolution is the greatest example in history of how certain jobs became obsolete and a lot more jobs became created. And I don't want to ever be insensitive to the fact that someone may lose a job, but on a macro level, which is all you can really ask me about as an economist, at a macro level, I'm telling you, it's going to create new jobs. It's going to create growth, create opportunity. And it behooves us to, and you've been fighting for this your whole career. It behooves us to be a dynamic in how we think about the economy. We want mobility. We want dynamism. We want an opportunity society, because the more dynamic we are, the more opportunity can be spread to more people. And so no one has to go out and learn to code to benefit from this. There's going to be other efficiencies, other opportunities. Some people will learn to code. But my point is, this is going to create efficiencies to create jobs.
All right. Well, David, so wonderful to be with you. Thanks for carving out some of your Saturday afternoon. And to close out the show, we always end with two of the best in the business so you can figure out how to make more money. Two of my best financial analysts are Bob and Ryan Payne.
Life insurers put life into the things you live for. The new factory that's hiring your neighbors. Maintenance on the bridge that keeps traffic flowing. The paycheck that puts pizza night on the table. Life insurers contribute $8 trillion to communities and local economies through bond purchases and other investments, and protect the financial security of 90 million American families, like yours. See how life insurers put life into America at acli.com. Paid for by the American Council of Life Insurers.